Grace and peace. I'm Brian Mustard, the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Christian Fellowship, the peace of Jesus Christ to change our lives, and the power of the Holy Spirit to change the world. We are continuing our series on the reality of worship, what we do when we worship God. And this is the fifth lesson in this. We're looking at worship in heaven, worship when all is set right. In the next two videos, there will be two videos for this lesson, two parts to the series. We're going to look at, in this first section, the vision Isaiah casts of what the end of things will be, what the day of the Lord will be, what the new creation of new heaven and earth will be. We'll look at Isaiah's vision in Lesson 5, Part 1. And then in the next one, the second video part of this lesson, we're going to look at John's vision that is recorded in Revelation, specifically in chapters 4 and 5. And we'll be looking at worship in these scenarios. So what does worship look like in heaven? What does worship look like when things are set right again? So since there are only two videos in this lesson, they will probably be a little bit longer than the normal ones, and we'll go through things in that order. So now, first I'm going to start with the first four verses in Isaiah chapter 2. The word that Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in the later days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come, let us go to the go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall decide disputes for many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So just some ideas that we want to point out in those verses. One, the worship of God that takes place in this vision is all nations will worship God. Many peoples will come to Jerusalem and worship God. Part of that worship is they will learn the ways of God, they will learn the law, and they will follow it. God will be the judge between the nations and decide disputes, which is interesting. It seems like in this vision that Isaiah casts at the end of all things, when the world is set right, there is still disputes between the nations that God needs to settle, or maybe that's just the kind of a preemptive settling of the events, or maybe that's talking about the day of the Lord that happens right before this, so that the disputes between the nations have been settled. One, there will be no need for swords and spears, but there will still be a need for plowshares and pruning hooks. So for anybody who hangs around with me at all, I highlight the idea about work, and it seems in Isaiah's vision of heaven, there is still work that is to be done. There is still the need for plowshares and pruning hooks. He envisions heaven with agricultural work still available to it. So now the next passage we're going to look at is a little bit more extended, and I'm just going to kind of work through it, not read the whole thing to you guys, but kind of highlight what comes out as we go through it. You can pause to read it on your own, but here it's Isaiah 60, and I've cut out a bunch of the passages. But we see that the nations come to Jerusalem, come to Israel, because the light God is shining on them, and the kings, the representatives of the nations, are that way. And when they come, they bring their wealth, the abundance of the sea, the multitudes of camels, so this trade idea going back and forth, bringing the products of that trade, those trade routes, gold and frankincense. Flocks bringing the products of shepherding and those sorts of things. The ships of Tarshish, so sea trade is involved here. Silver and gold with them for the name of the Lord your God, for the Holy One of Israel, because he has made you beautiful. Foreigners are building the walls, and kings are ministering to them. So we see here the nations, we see that the products of work, the products of trade, the products of the sea, the products of agriculture, again, are all coming to be presented to the Lord in worship. They are presenting gifts to God from the products of their labor. Moving on a little bit, again, it mentions the wealth of the nations being presented to God. Here, Lebanon, so timber and lumber and the building that comes out of that is their gold again. I will make your overseers peace and your taskmasters righteousness. So the rulers and the people in charge will bring peace and righteousness, or peace and righteousness will be those things that are in charge of the place. Violence will be no more, and your walls will be salvation. Your gates will be praise. Looking kind of at the end of this chapter, the sun shall be no more your light by day, for brightness shall the moon give, nor for brightness shall the moon give you light. But the Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. They shall possess the land forever, so they'll be established in the land. And the least one shall become a clan, the smallest one a mighty nation. I am the Lord. In its time I will hasten it. So just kind of some ideas out of this. Nations will come to worship God because of God's light on Israel. The wealth of nations will be used in the worship of God. Violence will be no more. Rulers will be, or will bring, peace and righteousness. They will have a permanent home. They will be planted in the land. And extended families, there will be a sense of families that will come from those who are alone or individuals. Everybody will be producing children and producing offspring. So there's a couple things here that are kind of sticking out. The idea of families in heaven and producing offsprings and clans coming from people. Again, the work idea that heaven, the worship that is in this scene, is part of it is bringing the products of human labor and presenting them to God as an offering and praising God through that. So then Isaiah 65, this is going to be another one of those that I just kind of worked through as we see. For behold, I created a new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. So they are rejoicing, they are glad because of the creation. Jerusalem is the center of this joy. His people will be centered there in Jerusalem. No more shall be heard in it the sound of weeping and the cry of distress, so no more tears. And everybody will live as long as they, so our lives will be as they should be. The length of our lives will be as they should be. When we build houses, we'll live in them. When we plant vineyards, we'll eat the fruit. That things will be as they ought to be. The effort you put in will provide a space for you. My chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands. The idea of the curse and that work will be frustrated and frustrating is no longer. For they shall be the offspring of the blessed of the Lord. Labor in vain, bear children for calamity. When kids come, things will just be as they are. 24 is just a very special verse. Before they call, I will answer. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear. I'm going to come back to that kind of at the end. The wolf and the lamb shall graze together. The lion shall eat the straw like the ox. The dust shall be the serpent's food. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, says the Lord. So even nature will be at peace with itself. Nature will be at peace with the lion and the lamb, the wolf and the lamb, the lion. It will eat like straw of the ox. The serpent, yeah. Before they call, I will answer. Now, when we're talking about the Exodus in Genesis, in Exodus, in the book of Exodus, the Israelites cry out, and God hears them and delivers them. When we look at Judges, quite often the Israelites cry out, and God delivers them. And there is this promise throughout the Old Testament that God will hear the cry of the oppressed. God will hear the cry of those who need Him. This is saying that even before they call out, God will be answered. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. So it's promising a presence of God that has yet to be there. So we will delight in the new heavens and the new earth God creates. Joy will replace sadness. The city of Jerusalem will be the central location for this joy. Things will be as they should be. The way the world was supposed to be is the way things will be in this future vision of Isaiah. Our work will yield the results it should yield. We will have the joy of children and families. There will even be peace within nature. And God will be present. So that's Isaiah's vision of what is to come, of the hope of the future, this prominent future vision that Isaiah has. And there's more passages throughout the book of Isaiah that highlights this. And there's some things in the other prophetic books that kind of go along with some of Isaiah's vision. But that is kind of what the future of Isaiah has imagined, has envisioned, and what's going on there. So questions for you to discuss, drop down in the comments section if you want to respond. What part of Isaiah's vision in these three passages do you find most compelling, and why? Each of these passages seem to indicate that work still exists in Isaiah's vision. Plowshares and pruning hooks, the wealth of nations, and enjoying the work of our hands in each of the things. How is this similar to or different from your normal thoughts about heaven? Do you have a vision of heaven that includes some of the work-related ideas that Isaiah describes in his vision? Okay. More questions. There are 5 questions on this one. The results of work, trade, shepherding, smithing, lumbering, etc. are presented to God as signs of worship. Do you think this is a literal picture of worship in heaven or metaphorical? Okay. Question number 4. What would have to happen for Isaiah's vision to come true? And how should we worship now in anticipation of Isaiah's vision? So those are the questions. Would love to hear your comments on them as you think through these passages, as you think through Isaiah's vision and how worship is applied to Isaiah's vision. I would love to hear from you. Drop down in the comments section, and as you comment, I will respond appropriately. As always, there are 3 ways to join this conversation. In person Sunday nights at 5, in the JEMIC, live Monday nights 7 p.m. via Zoom, and these weekly wrap-ups on YouTube and or WordPress. I'm all over social media: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, YouTube. Like, subscribe, and follow as appropriate, and I'll get back to you on those things. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. I hope it continues real soon.